Hi everyone, welcome to the Assignment 3 overview video for EDSS 311. So in this video, I will be going over the expectations for the third assignment. And there's quite a bit to get through, so we'll get straight into it. So this assignment is due Monday, April the 29th by 11:59 p.m. unless you choose to use the 7 or 14-day flexible portal, which you will know all about by this point. So this assignment is a mandatory task, as were the other two assignments, which means that you must complete all three assignments in order to be able to pass the unit, as long as you have over 50%. The weighting of this assignment is 50%, so it is the larger of the three assignments. It is a planning task. And the number of words for this assessment is 2,000 words. However, this is notional. You will remember from the unit overview video that I went over what notional means, and I will just briefly explain what that means in relation to this assignment. There are two things that this is referring to. On the one hand, there will be a lot of words in this assignment that aren't yours. They are extracted words from the syllabus. Sometimes they are copied and pasted from earlier sections of the assignment. So in that way, you will more than likely have over 2,000 words. You should have over 2,000 words, but they are not 2,000 words that you have written. The other thing to consider is that when you are writing your learning sequence, you will be using a lot of dot points. In fact, all of it will be dot points, except for maybe the key questions that you are asking. So we say notional in this case because instead of writing a big essay or a big paragraph explaining a learning activity, you will be using dot points, which will be equivalent to about the size of a paragraph. So that is why we say notional. So please do not be too concerned about your word count. It'll be plenty over the 2,000, but again, not necessarily words that you have written. Before you attempt this assignment, it is essential that you are caught up with all readings and lectures in this unit, especially for the last three topics. These last three topics include assessment in society environment curriculum, inquiry learning, and the cognitive inquiry sequence. You will need to complete the quizzes in order to open the topic notes, especially for week 8, where the topic notes go over the cognitive inquiry sequence and what this is all about. So be sure to get through all those readings before you work on this assignment. You need to take the time to become familiar with one of the following senior HSIE syllabuses that are intended for use with year 11 or year 12 students that you are intending to teach. So this is your teaching area. If you have more than one teaching area, you will choose the teaching area that you want to focus your learning sequence on. You may choose the syllabus that you are more comfortable with or the least comfortable with. It's completely up to you. If you wish to have a discussion about it, feel free to contact me. For this assignment, you are encouraged to use the New South Wales syllabuses. If you are living outside of New South Wales and there is another curriculum document that you wish to use, please contact me and we can have a discussion about it. You are not disadvantaged to use the New South Wales syllabuses as they are based on the Australian curriculum. However, if you would like to work with your curriculum document, that's fair enough. And again, you can contact me and we can discuss. Students in the past outside of New South Wales have found that the syllabuses from New South Wales are handy, the way that they are set up, and easy to navigate. So please contact me if you still wish to not use these syllabuses. For this assignment, you will be demonstrating your understanding of how to create a cognitive inquiry learning sequence. You will be providing justifications, explanations for your choices in the design of your sequence, and you will become more familiar with your teaching area as you prepare for your next curriculum unit in trimester 2, where you will focus on the teaching of your chosen subject. So this may be the first time that you have looked at your senior syllabus, and in the next trimester, you will solely be focusing on that syllabus. So this is time to prepare, begin flipping through the syllabus and having a look at the different topics and units of work that you will one day be expected to teach. So in this assessment task, you will be designing a cognitive inquiry learning sequence using the IGAS model taught to you in the last topic of this unit, which is why it's really important and essential, mandatory that you open those topic notes. The assignment is presented in 6 separate parts, parts A, B, C, D, E, and F. The learning sequence will be for use in a unit of work found in one of the above syllabuses for either year 11 or year 12. So make sure that you watch all of this assignment 3 overview video and make sure that you are looking at the examples that I have provided, because there are further explanations that are provided in these examples. These are provided to you because I have been marking these assignments, although they have changed a little bit, but I have been marking these assignments for quite some time. I am aware of the areas that students struggle in. I am aware of the areas where students often make errors and lose marks. And these are the reasons why I have provided a lot of scaffolding for you in order to help you. Yes, there are a lot of instructions, but these are here to guide you, because if you didn't have a lot of instruction, then you may become confused and unsure about what you are being asked to do. I am also trying to exemplify what it means to be a good teacher by showing you how great it can be for students to understand what they are being asked to do by providing examples, scaffolding, templates, so that students know what they are expected to do. I may not necessarily be able to provide examples of answers because there just may be reasons that I'm not allowed to do that, but I will try my best to ensure that I am giving you as much instruction as possible on how to complete each of these sections. So again, be sure that you are looking through each of the examples, all of the supportive material that's provided to you in the assignment 3 section. Learning sequences become a part of units of work. That means that they are not complete units of work, but they are part of a unit of work. And just to show you an example of something that I've showed you in a previous weekly video, this is an example of a unit of work that I used in year 7 when teaching year 7. And you can see that there are questions that inform maybe 1 week of learning or 2 weeks of learning. So how do we examine historical sources? That could inform a learning sequence. And what a learning sequence means is that there are many different lessons that are informed by that one question that you seek for your students to answer. So this means that in this learning sequence, how do we examine historical sources? There will be 3 or 4 lessons where students are working through different types of activities, which we will go over and be doing in this assignment in order to be able to answer that question. So within learning sequences, we have lessons, okay? So sort of think of it as from bigger to smaller. We have the curriculum, we have syllabus documents, we have unit plans, we have topics within the unit plans, and alongside those topics, we have learning sequences / lessons. The other point I wanted to mention is that there are students in this unit who are from many different courses. Some of you, this will be your very first unit at UNE in your teaching degree. Some of you will have been at UNE for some time. Many of you, this will be your first teaching unit. There are many things in this unit that you may be wondering. What's a lesson plan? What's a learning activity? What does that look like? What am I supposed to be doing? How do I design what you're asking me to do? And how do I showcase that in a Word document? So that is another reason why I have used a lot of examples and tried to help you see this, because when I went to university to study teaching, I never saw any examples, and I think that would have really helped me a lot. So that's another reason why there are a lot of supportive materials for you. So ensure again that you are watching this complete overview video, looking at the examples, and taking in all of those different explanations that are provided for you. So now we are going to go on to part A. This is where you are selecting the content, an outcome, concept, and skill for your learning sequence. This is the part where you get to figure out what it is that you are going to teach for this learning sequence. So you have chosen the syllabus that you are going to teach from, that you are going to design a learning sequence from. So that may be any of these here. So you will be looking through the syllabus thinking, perhaps say you're looking through the ancient history syllabus and thinking, I really like the topic on King Tut's tomb. I would really love to design a learning sequence on that because I know a lot about that and that would be really interesting. I love that topic. Or you may be thinking, King Tut's tomb is not something that I know much about. I'd like to know more because it will be something that I potentially have to teach. So you can choose how you approach this assignment, go with what you're familiar with, or go with something that you are unfamiliar with to become more familiar with it. So this part of the assignment again is where you are extracting from the syllabus. So I'm just going to go back quickly to the assignment page to show you some of the extra material that's provided for you, and we're going to look at it simultaneously. Okay, so looking at the assignment, you are watching the video, which is here. There's information here on assignment 3. I will go over that as well. The model for teaching the skill, you know what this is. This is this one that I've linked into all of the assignments because in each of the assignments, we are thinking about skills. That has not escaped us at all. We've got the cognitive inquiry learning sequence example, something on table presentation. I'll talk about that in a moment. Just a video that supports the sequence that I provided for you as the example, and the criteria sheet as well, and the discussion forum if you have any questions about the assignment. Remember that this video you don't have to watch, but you can just read this here and see what instructions are being given there. So let's download the example. So this is your template here on the right-hand side. So we're going to be talking about this section here, where we're looking at the title, the syllabus, the content, concept, skill, and outcome. So state the title of your sequence. So we're looking at the example as well, which I have here. I decided that my title would be Industry and Globalization, and this might not be something that you figure out until you are well and truly into the assignment. You've developed the sequence question and so forth. So feel free to leave that in the first instance. Then you are stating what syllabus you are using and providing a reference. Okay, so that's 1 and 2 already done. The content, you are going to be choosing content from the syllabus that could be taught in about 4 hours of class time using the learning sequence. And you're going to provide a reference, which is included here. So what is 4 hours of class time? I will go over that in a few moments, but right now we'll just pretend that we already know what 4 hours of class time is. And the one thing I will say about this is that you can fix this section up. You may have a plan here for the part A in terms of the content, and you may come up with a concept initially that you would like to teach, or you think will be taught through teaching of that content, a skill and an outcome, and you may adjust. You may start working on your learning sequence and realize, you know what, that's a little bit too much content, or I need a little bit more. So you can play around with it and fix it up as required. So you're going to choose a concept. So this is where you are naming a concept that is most fundamental to your cognitive inquiry sequence, and you're going to need to justify this later on. It should be only 1 or 2 words. You remember from the junior secondary syllabuses that there are concepts that students need to learn and know and understand. And these include, for example, from geography, interconnections, place, space. In history, we had continuity and change, perspectives, and so forth. So you'll notice that in the senior syllabuses, things are set out a little bit differently. You may need to try to understand what the concepts might be by reading through the content. The society and culture syllabus is really quite forthright about giving you the concept straight away, but some of the other ones you might need to just have a think about what a concept is and how that can be taken from a unit of work and a topic. So that might be a little bit more work there. But the topic notes again will guide you through what a concept is that you need to be choosing. And again, you've had experience with the junior secondary syllabuses, so you have an idea of what a concept. All right, so once you do that, you are going to choose a skill. So you're stating 1 skill from the syllabus that your students will develop in your learning sequence. Students may develop more than 1 skill, but you only need to state 1 at this point. Do not state any skills that begin with communicate. The reason for this is because I'd like you to focus on subject-specific skills that students will need to learn. Yes, there are subject-specific ways of communicating. For example, communication in business studies may be different from communication in ancient history or geography or society and culture, or legal studies, but we are focusing more on the other types of skills, subject-specific skills that students need to learn. In addition to that, we know that students will all be communicating to you some sort of product by the end of this learning sequence, so we want you to focus on one of the other skills. I will go over how to find an appropriate skill from the different syllabuses. So be sure that you are not choosing one of those that begin with communicate. There are also other skills that students learn, obviously, outside of the syllabus. This is something that I don't think I have mentioned before, but there are skills that we are teaching our students that don't necessarily come from the syllabuses. For example, the skill of being able to work with others in a group, the skill of being able to speak in front of a class. So these are all skills that are very important and are ones that you will teach your students. But for this assignment and pretty much all of the assignments in this unit so far, you will be focusing on the skills that are from the syllabus. And the reason why I have done this is because I want you to become so familiar with the curriculum as much as possible so that when you go into the field, you will have so much more knowledge than I ever had when I went into the field, and you will feel more confident, okay, for having had that experience of looking through the syllabuses and flipping through them and deciding on, for example, in this assignment, what topic you want to use. And just to sidetrack for a little bit, that's what's really great about this assignment is that most of you won't open the syllabus and just pick the first thing that you see. Many of you, if not all, will be looking through the syllabus for quite some time to decide on what topic that you really like. And by doing this, you are becoming familiar with the other topics that you may not use in this sequence, but that you will have to teach one day. So by looking through the ancient history syllabus, you will see all the different topics that you have to teach, or in legal studies. And you will be making a determination of what you want to choose, all the while becoming familiar with the skills, the layout of the syllabus, even though we are getting new syllabuses soon, but just becoming really familiar with that document, which is the aim of the game here. So please ensure that you are choosing the correct skill for the year level you have chosen. So if you are choosing a year 12 unit of work, then you are not choosing a year 11 outcome skill. And you are familiar from the first assignment with understanding that there are skills that are specific for example, stage 4 and stage 5. We know that the codes are different between stage 4 and stage 5, whether that be 4-5 and 5-5. And the reason they are different is because the expectations are higher. The language that's used between one outcome and the other is different. The cognitive verbs are different. There are higher expectations for students in years 9 and 10, which makes sense, than in years 7 and 8. So, and that's why I shared that cognitive verb video with you, just to make sure that you are really identifying and seeing those cognitive verbs that are being used. And they are really the ticket to differentiating between year 7 and 8 outcome and a year 9 and 10 outcome. Okay, so that's really what we're looking for, making sure that you are choosing the correct skill. Then you're going to choose an outcome that your sequence will most directly address. You really need to think hard about what you want your outcome to be, because you will be assessing your students in the sequence, in the final stage of the cognitive inquiry sequence on this outcome. Outcomes are 4 units of work. I talked about this in week 6 when I talked about assessment. You are not necessarily assessing on that specific outcome, but the language that's used in a rubric comes from the outcomes in a unit of work. But for this assignment, you are going to look at that outcome as if that's something that you need to assess a student on, and what that might look like. And this is all part of becoming prepared to learn how to see how outcomes inform an assessment, how teachers can learn to identify when a student has achieved that. So you're starting to think about all these different things. Again, things that I was never asked to do, and I would have really benefited in my first years as a teacher to be able to do any of these things, okay? So for the outcome, please make sure you're not choosing a skills-based outcome that begins with communicate. I will show you in the different syllabuses where skill-based outcomes are in the tables and how to identify between the two. If you're really struggling to differentiate between skill-based outcomes and just knowledge and understanding outcomes, let me know. Some of the units of work, for example, in history, are really skill-based, so that can be an interesting conversation too. But don't stress too much. Just again, if you're not sure, you can ask me, but I will show you the tables and that will make it more clear. Again, ensuring that you are choosing the correct outcome for the year level that you have chosen. Okay, so for example, this one here is for a year 12 unit of work, or say, for example, it is, that's why it's H12 and H7. Just to reiterate, please do not use this unit of work in your assignment because unfortunately you will receive 0. So please do not use it. Every year somebody seems to still use it, but so please do not use it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to show you some examples from the syllabuses on how to extract information. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at the table. So this is for ancient history. This will be similar for modern history as well. So you can see that this table here on page 13, these are the course outcomes for year 11 and year 12, knowledge and understanding. So you will be taking your outcomes from here. If we go down to the next continuum table, and again, this is the same for modern history, so I won't use that modern history example, I'll just use this one. These are the skill-based outcomes. So these are where you're going to grab your skills from. Now, you're not going to use 11-9 or 12-9 because this begins with communicates, okay? So you're not using either of these. You use one of these other ones. Let's look at some of the other examples. Society and culture, bit of a different sort of syllabus. Interesting. Yeah, it's different. All right, so this one is actually a little bit similar to some of the other ones where there's objectives and outcomes. So P being the preliminary course and H being the HSC. So years 11 and 12. Skill-based outcomes are listed down here on the second half of the table. So this is on page 14. Again, not choosing P10 or H10, but one of the other ones. So basically, the skills that students will be developing are applying ethical, social, and cultural research to investigate and analyze information, and then also the communication. So they'll be doing something here. So they need to be conducting some sort of research or planning something or selecting or information, which is similar to what they do in history in the junior secondary years, trying to extract information. That's a skill, right? And they've learned this in history, hopefully, on how to analyze and use sources. So selecting it and being able to provide interpretation consideration. All right, looking at the economic syllabus. You'll also see another table which is similar to the society and culture one that I just mentioned. So this first table here is more of the knowledge and understanding type outcomes. And then we've got the skills here as well. Again, not choosing P10 and H10 for the skills. Now, you'll find that the business studies, legal studies, I believe studies of religion are basically the same as these ones. We've got kind of two types of syllabuses in the HSIE at the moment until we get the new ones. We've got the ancient and modern history that sort of look the same and are very similar to the junior secondary syllabuses. And then we have the other ones, which all sort of have this older style look to them. And they all follow sort of this format with the tables, okay? So those of you who are using a syllabus other than ancient or modern history can just follow this example here that I've used with economics and also the example from society and culture. Okay, so that's what you do. Now, an interesting thing to note, which you should see in all the syllabuses, is that if you want an idea of what 4 hours of work is, you can have a look here at the different units of work. So for example, Introduction to Economics is 10% of the course time. And that's 12 hours. So if we go to Introduction to Economics, that's here. We know that it will take you, should take you about 12 hours to get through this. You just divide it by however many topics there are and go from there. You can kind of do that, but it gives you an idea of how much time you need to spend on one section. So for example, if I was to choose 4 hours of work from here, I might choose, you might choose some sections from both of these. Or if you want, you can just choose one. And you may find that you fly through some of the other topics a little bit more quickly. So what you'll really want to think about in 4 hours of work, because if you did 4 hours per topic, that's way more than 12 for sure. But again, there may be some topics that require an inquiry sequence more so than something else. So that's for you to decide. Is this something that is an inquiry-based topic? If you're unsure, you can have a discussion with me and we can talk about it. But that's the first thing that I would do is have a look for these tables at the beginning, which tell you how long a unit of work should be. Now, if you look at the histories, they also have the same sort of hour-based indication. So for year 11, you can see that 60 hours are spent looking at investigating ancient history. And there's quite a bit to get through there. It's not just 2 units of work. They're looking at different case studies and everything. So you'll really need to spend some time looking at what investigating ancient history is all about and understanding what's involved in that 60 hours. What is the nature of ancient history? What are these case studies? How many are there? How many topics are in these different case studies? And then remembering that 60 hours is what you need to cover this. So if we go down to investigating ancient history, we know that students are looking at one of the following options. So if they're looking at the investigation of ancient sites and sources, there's not a lot of content here. However, this could still be a great inquiry sequence, or parts of it could take up to 4 hours. So while the economics one may have more content extracted, you may find that in your subject, if it's history, that 4 hours could be covered just looking at the changing nature of archaeological excavation and recording techniques and the problems of, you might just have that. So it really depends on your subject area. Because you are experts in your teaching area, you will have an idea of the length of time it takes to look at different topics. Whereas if you looked at one you're not familiar with, it would be a lot more difficult. If you're unsure about what to do, you can do 2 things. Number 1, you can email me and ask me, and we can talk about what your 4 hours might look like. Number 2, you can just start working on your learning sequence and see how you go. And this is what I did. If you are looking at the geography syllabus, you will see that some of these dot points from this section didn't make it into the learning sequence. And that's because as I was working on the idea, I realized that some parts may not work and they may not be addressed in my learning sequence. So I took those out, and you can do the same thing. Okay, so those are some options there. So things to remember: the tables at the beginning that show you the outcomes. In all of the syllabuses, they have this. Not to use the skill-based outcome that starts with communicate, and also taking the time to go through the syllabus to become familiar with the content so you can choose a topic that you like, and also looking at the tables that show you the hours for each unit of work and deciding what 4 hours might look like based on how much time you are expected to use to teach different units of work. Okay, so we're going to move on to part B. I'm going to talk about parts B and C in this video, and then I'm going to do another video for the rest of it. So you're going to state your sequence question. So mine is, how are industries impacted by globalization? A very general question, but also one that's specific to the content. It needs to be a higher order question, and by higher order, usually those types of questions begin with how. Your safe bet is to do that. Why do we need a how question for? Because when students are asked questions like, what is the capital city of such and such place? You don't need to do an inquiry sequence in order to find the answer to that question. You do need to do a learning sequence, an inquiry learning sequence, in order to answer questions that start with how. Because you do need to think about and have your students think about processes, relationships, interconnections. And that's what happens when you ask how questions. And that's what we really want students to be doing in these sequences, are these levels of analysis. You could ask questions like, what is the relationship between? You could get away with that. But if you can ask a how-based question, that's better. Make sure it's only one question. Don't say how, da 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 da, and also da 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 da. Just have one single question, because you will lose marks if you don't. And it needs to be general, and there's a reason for that. You need to state the answer to the sequence question that you intend your students to arrive at by the end of the cognitive inquiry sequence. So it's a single sentence general statement, which is broad enough to be applied to a different but similar situation. And there's more on this in the topic notes, which is why you need to open those up and have a read. So if we look at this one, globalization can provide cheap goods, large profits, and new employment, but it can also disrupt traditional life, cause personal suffering, and create conflict. So you will see from the example that I provided that we looked at, which is where the China Blue documentary comes from, where students in doing this sequence would look at where different clothing pieces are made over in China and the different exploitation practices that are occurring. So we are looking at the impacts of globalization on different industries. The reason why that needs to be very general, I haven't said anything about China. I haven't said anything about clothing or anything like that. I did say cheap goods. And the reason for that is because when we get to part D, you're going to come up with a different topic that students would look at after the sequence is done. So they've completed the sequence and they have completed some type of assessment to show you. And then it sort of like comes after the sequence. And this is where students are sort of being asked to reconsider the generalization that they've been provided. And they do this through looking at a different context, a different country, a different situation where they can reconsider it. Does it have to rebut the generalization through the new context? No, but it can. Can it re-support the generalization through different context? Yes, it can. So it can do either of those things. So you can see here that my example, we looked at livestock and economic activity in that way. So that's how we were looking at globalization and reconsidering that generalization. So that is why you need to have a really good question and also an answer to that question, which is general enough that you can have them rethink what they've been taught. So I think that's pretty clear there. Part C, where you are situating the sequence. You have spent time looking through the syllabus, choosing your topic, and now you have your unit of work. You should know where that unit of work sits. You should know that it's at the beginning of year 12, at the end of year 12, at the beginning of year 11. By now, you know, going into year 11, what students have learned in history overall, sort of. When you've looked through the syllabus, you kind of have an idea about what they've been learning. You should know where students are at when they come into year 11. What you're really doing here in this section is thinking about where your learning sequence is situated in a unit of work. So we go back to looking at the economics example, and we go back to that first unit of work. Say you've chosen Introduction to Economics. You want to do a learning sequence here. You've had students examine economic issues, apply economic skills, and you want students to really learn about the operation of an economy. And this is what you're going to be looking at. In the situating of the sequence in a unit plan, you will need to mention and consider what sort of stuff, what sort of topics, what sort of skills students have learned in order to bring them to this point where they can carry on. There's a reason why the operation of an economy is in this part of the unit and not at the beginning. So you need to be thinking about that. Now, if we look at the geography syllabus, we can do the same thing. Have a look at a unit of work. So biophysical interactions, what are students learning? say you choose to do a unit of work on the biophysical environment. What have students learned prior to this, and where will they be going after? What's coming after? It could be in the next unit of work, or it could be just at the end of the unit of work. So I think that explains the situating of the sequence. Now, if we have a look at the criteria sheet of what we just looked at, the selection of content, outcome, the concept and skill is worth 5 marks. Your sequence, question, and generalization is worth 5 marks. And the situating of the sequence is worth 5 marks. So now I'm going to end this video and I'm going to do another video explaining the rest of the assignment, because this part is going to take you some time in order to prepare to move on to parts D, E, and F. Just before we finish up, we will just have a look at the information for assignment 3. Making sure that you come in here and look at the frequently asked questions. There may be something that's, a question that you have. And also reading through, we just went over parts A, B, and C. So this can be supportive material for you to guide you through how to choose these different sections and write these different sections. All right, so I'll be back shortly to look at parts D, E, and F.